Spencer Pirdy.
What's up, bro?
Welcome, dude. Hey,
Happy
listen,
Friday.
I'm so happy Friday. Dude, I'm so stoked you're here. Thank you so much for making the time.
I'm so honored to be on here.
Well, you're running fast. You're running from one job to another, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Of course.
So, Spence, you know a little bit what this is all about, but this is the Passion Project, and I get to chat with really cool people doing really cool things, and you're doing a lot of that. And
thanks.
so, and what's been really fun for you and me, like over the last, we met probably 5 or 6 years ago. And since then, we've actually spent a fair bit of time together, noodling on some stuff, working on some stuff. And so it's been really cool. And it's been really rad for me to watch your personal evolution during that time. Like, a lot's changed. We'll talk about it. But like, you've done a lot. You've accomplished a lot. I'd say that you've grown a lot, like in really cool, impressive ways. So I want to capture some of that.
You've led the way and the path for a lot of what I enjoy doing because you've done it before me. So yeah, I've got a lot of love and respect for you, and thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, awesome. Well, super fun. So, but we're going to start in. So you told me a story. So you've been on the list because what I like to do is I like to get people in here like when there's an event coming up, and you have big events further on in the year, more in summertime. But you told a story the other day, and I'm like, I got to get Spencer. I got to get, because while it's fresh.
Yeah,
so
it's fresh.
I'm going to frame it this way. Before I frame this, we're going to get to the story. Just kind of a high level. You just came from, where did you just come from?
Just now,
Yep.
I was at a broker preview. I'm a real estate agent here in Newport Beach, Corona Del Mar, Costa Mesa, Orange County area. And I was at a broker preview on 1089 Glen Circle in West Side Costa Mesa.
By the time this airs, you will have already sold it. So
I hope so.
But it's one of the many hats you wear, because I would say that Spencer Pirdy is a big wave surfer, big ocean paddler. You are a fitness coach. You sometimes work down at one of the surf shops, the board club. You serve on an advisory board for the Ben Carlson. Like, you have a lot of different things that you do, and you seem to juggle them and balance them really well. So just cool. But let's get to the story. So I'm just going to frame it, and then I'm going to shut up and let you tell it, because it's incredible. It's gnarly, but I think it's super representative of you and what you're into and your passions, and also your skill sets that allow you to do some of this stuff. So Spencer, you told the story about something that happened last week. Tell the story.
Yeah, it was. So now it'll be 2 weeks. It was 2 weeks from yesterday. And so this winter, leading into the winter, there was a lot of talk about El Nino. If you're a surfer or a snowboarder, you hear that and you go, big storms, right? In the winter, El Nino are these big storms that funnel across the North Pacific, and they bring us snow and they bring us surf. I'm not much of a snowboarder, but I am a surfer. And so there was this hype leading into, it started in probably the summertime, but then into the fall, and then it came to fruition here at the end of 2023 in December. There was this week of storms that lit up and really just were lighting up the whole coastline of California.
Did some destruction too. I mean, it was so big.
I think everyone kind of saw
Central
that one
Coast
video
and
too on the news that showed all the people getting mowed down in Ventura.
Yeah.
So I got really excited when those storms were lining up, and I wanted to go up to Mavericks. And then this one storm in particular got so big, and so it had weather with it. So as surfers, sometimes, you want the swell, but then if it's got too much stormy weather with it, it's just unrideable. Or in this case, it was too big up there. There were guys towing it. I'm sure everyone saw. There were 70, 80-foot waves getting towed into at Mavericks. So I like to paddle if I can. And also it was just kind of another realm. Those are the guys that are just doing it every waking hour as a profession. And I had to kind of recalculate where I was going to go, kind of come up with a plan B. And I found a spot, and I won't ever name the spot. You can ask me as long as you want, and I'm not going to, because it's protected. But it was along the California coast. And I knew it was probably going to be really good and really big. And I left here in the wee hours of the morning on the day that I knew was going to be the biggest. I arrived at around sunup, I had a 10-foot surfboard that was brand new, and I was so chomping at the bit to get out there and ride some big waves on it and push myself. I trained for this, as you know, all year round. It's something that I just love like nothing else in the world. And as the sun rose that morning, there was only a couple other guys looking at it, and I thought, from my vantage point, that it was about 25 feet on the face, 30 foot on the face, but we knew the full swell hadn't even arrived all the way yet. So I honestly wanted to get out there. I thought there was a little window. Mavericks at that point people were saying it was 80 feet or whatever. So I wanted to get out there before the whole place got too wild and woolly and shut down, pretty much, like was unrideable.
And this was, when you were looking at it, it was paddleable from the beach.
It was definitely, I knew I could get out there. I knew I could find some that I could ride. Like, that was where my confidence level was. And
how many people were with you?
There was one other person with me.
And you had,
and that was my, this is a place where you couldn't bring in like a safety team or anything like that.
Super local.
And very localized, and you got to check in with the locals, and they're going to check you, not check in with you, check you. Yep. And yeah, you just, I won't say it's somewhere on the California coast.
And this is for people that this is an etiquette thing where there are certain places in California and Hawaii, everywhere, that you never take pictures there. There's no video. You can never do anything that would give it away. And if you do, bad things can happen.
Yeah, and it's
respect.
It's a respect thing. They have a great thing going, and you shouldn't ruin that. And if you're going to try to do that, you are not going to be welcome back there, and you shouldn't, because it's a special place. It's not like Blackie's where there's a bar and there's a bunch of parking and people right there. No, it's off the grid. So saw these amazing walls of water and went, I think these are, in my experience, it was clean enough. It was the right size that I could push myself still, and then hopefully get out of there before it got too closed out.
So this is a growing swell. It was, the conditions still looked pretty good.
The buoys for our zone were just shy. One buoy was greater than the San Pedro buoy, which is close to us here in SoCal. That exceeded a storm that hit last winter that broke records almost a year to the date. And then there was one that was just shy of the record from last winter.
So this is maxing.
As big as it gets.
So you paddle.
For the winter time around here.
How was that paddle out?
The paddle out was great because it was kind of current sucking us out. But with that in mind, with the current sucking you out, I've been in enough big waves to where I could feel just this power and this raw energy like I've only maybe never felt, maybe in Hawaii. It was energy like that, open ocean, raw power, a long interval. For those that don't know, like a longer interval, the longer the interval, the more punch a swell packs. And so I could feel that when I was paddling out, and it's almost like it was a conveyor belt out there, almost like this evil little, oh yeah, we'll bring you right to the source, Spencer, And so I got out there, and the wave breaks in deep water, and it's pretty damn far out there. And so when I got to what I thought was deep water in a safe place,
because a new spot like this, you don't have the lineups where you can kind of figure out where you want to sit. If there's long interval between waves, so you think you're where you want to be, but you don't really know.
Yeah. And so and even if somebody was there to tell me, I don't even think that local would have known because of how big the swell was. It was just a different day. It was a different beast. And so I get out there, and I'm starting to see these beautiful, and this is where the whole like kid in a candy store type vibe came in, and I started to enjoy what I was seeing and going, I think I can get into that wave. I think I can get a good ride. And then my kind of froth level, or like, I got a little overzealous, and I started to get closer, and I start inching This is only like 2 minutes, 3 minutes of me being in that particular spot.
Got it.
And I think I'm still safe.
As opposed to waiting, watching, sitting on the out in the channel or
normal,
the corner and watching.
Normal safety protocol that you should follow. And so I'm inching a little closer, and then sure enough, it was less than probably 10 minutes in the lineup, quote unquote, the horizon just goes black. And I'm sitting on my brand new 10-foot Chris Christensen gun with a brand new leash, thick leash. And I just see it start to go black, and I start to paddle slowly, and I'm pretty sure I'm in very deep water. This wave's not going to break on me. And sure enough, I go over one, and the next one, which I would say I would measure it, in my mind, it was about 30 feet plus. And it starts to feather, and then in my mind, my like Spencer devil sense goes, yeah, you're screwed now. Oh, and I start to go, this thing's gonna break on me. And sure enough, it starts to feather and starts to break. And so I basically at that moment had to time my jump off, because I was going kind of up the face of it, but I wasn't gonna clear it over. Hold
on, I'm gonna stop you right there. Okay, because for most humans that have surfed our whole lives, or people who never surfed, like I just want to, I'm going to draw the picture. So you're out on, how big is the board?
10 foot.
It's a 10-foot surfboard. It's a big gun. That's
meant for catching, matching the speed of these big waves, so that's to catch it.
You've got a double leash plug, which is only for really, really big waves. Were you wearing flotation or an impact vest?
So I was wearing Patagonia makes a padded one that the flotation's already built in. So if you were to get knocked out, or if you'll come to find out, if you're swimming for over an hour, it'll help you float.
Got it.
And so yes, I was wearing one of those.
So already most people are like, I'm out. No interest. I'm one of them.
Yeah.
Like I'm out. It sounds amazing, and when you watch videos, which you can find a million online of you, but of other people, and it looks really fun. I always say, surfing big waves isn't the hard part. It's falling and surviving big waves. That's the really hard part.
Yeah, definitely.
Getting out, there's a lot of, but most of us shouldn't ever consider it unless you've done all the work like you and your friends do all year round. But I just want to frame, when you say, and this is like in surf lexicon, when the horizon goes black means a wave so big, so far out, is now blocking the horizon. Most of it, that is a nightmare that we don't ever want to have come to fruition.
It's a drive-in, as my good friend and shaper Roger Baltiera says. It's like a drive-in movie screen coming at you, And
how far offshore? Would you say you were?
I don't want to landmark or anything, but far. Very far. It would take.
Well, I think we're gonna know more in a minute. So, okay, I'm gonna stop now. I just wanted to frame it because I have the butterflies just thinking about it. We're sitting here in a box.
Yeah. So I had those butterflies too, because in the moment for me and how I normally feel, I don't, freaking out and panicking isn't really in the cards. I train hard for this stuff. I am putting myself in these situations, So, but I definitely got the nervous butterflies, and then I stick to what I know. So start to kind of breathe up, get ready. I knew I was going to make it over, so I had to go to plan B, which is time your dismount off the board. So you're paddling up the face. You time when you think you can get through the wave properly. If you dive too early, that thing's going to land on your head. If you dive too late, you could get sucked back over. So I just timed it and took a big deep breath, went under. And so I'm under this big wall of water. I could just feel the power. It was right when it hit me, I could just feel this whoosh. And I'm like, whoa, that is the Pacific Ocean, a lot of it right there. And so I've got the brand new leash to my brand new board, right? And I just feel that leash, and it's a 12-foot leash.
Which is big.
I feel it tug. And then lightly, I just hear this. And at that point, I knew my board had become, it's
gone.
It was no longer a part of me, It was, and then I started to flash back to that, that feeling I had when I was paddling out. Wow, this would suck to swim in this current and all this, tumultuous ocean. And so I knew that my board wasn't going to be with me anymore. And I felt that tug and that pull and the break. And then I went under the wave and was still under for a little bit, but kind of made it through, right? And then I turn around and I can see my board. It wasn't that far away. It almost like pulled enough to where it kind of got a little through. It was probably about 30 yards away from me. But then there's another wave coming, and it wasn't quite as big as the first one. But then I go, do I swim for my board? It's too far away. And then sure enough, the next wave comes, and then my board is gone. And I never, ever... And I haven't 2 weeks later to this day seen the board again.
And it's never to be seen again.
Never to be seen again. So at that point, I'm free swimming, and I've got my friend out there acknowledges with his eyes, and we communicate that I'm now free swimming, and he's kind of like, he was smarter and sat a little wider and was gonna ease his way in. And at that point, I'm going, all right. I train for this stuff. I swim, 9,000 yards a week. I paddle all summer long. I'm fit, and I got myself in this situation, but I know I'm pretty confident I can get myself out, and I've got to swim back in. And so at that point, I let my friend know, hey, I'm going to make an attempt to swim back in. And he's like, all right, I'm going to try to maybe catch one And so I start swimming in, and where I had come out from is where I was trying to get back to, this little area. And then this current from that set starts sucking me down the coast and down into a very, very bad spot. And there's big 20-foot waves that are breaking into coastline. I won't say what type of coastline to protect the location, but breaking into a very bad place that no boat, no person, you don't want to be anywhere near. And so I'm starting to try to fight that current and go back to where I came, and it's not working. And it's about 20 minutes, and then my friend is starting to come over, and he's getting tired from just paddling on his 10-foot board, And so we're kind of talking about, we're 20, 30 minutes into this ordeal now, and we're not making any headway. And it's
was he staying near you?
He was kind of staying in a little zone. I kind of wanted him there because I said, can you let me know when you see sets coming? Because I'm head down swimming as hard as I can.
So at this point, is he not really focused on catching waves?
No,
he's focused on you.
He's over it.
Okay.
He tried to catch one or two, and he's like, all right, I'm out too.
I'm on your team now. Okay,
and so we start to kind of like, all right, you watch me while you watch for sets while I'm head down swimming. And, and then I look up, and we're in an even worse spot, and I'm trying to go to the opposite way. And so then it's like 40 minutes, 45 minutes. Dude. And we're getting towards an hour. And then I realized there were some people watching, and I'm thinking in my head, and there were moments of fear when we were getting in that really bad spot. But I'm also thinking in my head, these people are probably watching us struggle, and they're probably on the phone with maybe first responders. And as we come to find out, they were. And so my friend and I basically had to recalibrate and reassess like the situation. We had to go, how are we going to get back in?
So what did it take to get, when you're in that bad spot?
Yep.
And you keep getting stuck there, and there's all this power. Like, what was that final piece that helped you get in where you needed to go?
So I realized I had to go back out to where the initial leash break and catching the wave on the head, which is scary, right? Putting yourself back in that situation. I had to go back out to where that happened, because that's where I knew I could get blown back in to a safer zone. But I had to take a couple big waves on the head. And then once that initial couple waves hit, I had to swim like my life depended on it, which did, to get in from that position. Because if I got sucked into the deep water, there was a lot of current over there, and it was just going to take me up or down the coast.
So clearly you made it because you're here.
I'm here, and I made it in.
How long did it take you to, how much swimming?
I think when I got back to look at the timing and everything, I think it was about an hour and 15 minutes of swimming. And when we got in, there was a first responder truck that had just arrived. And I think those guys were more stoked knowing that we made it in on our own because of the fact they weren't going to have to go in after us.
For sure.
And there was a lot of other, things that were activated first responder wise that, in hindsight, I feel a little, I thank them so much for responding, and I feel lucky that we made it in on our own. But it was a valuable lesson in knowing that Mother Nature always fucking wins. Yeah, always. Sure. Mother Nature, especially on a storm like that, you have to have a safety plan A, safety plan B, safety plan C. You have to know where you're getting into, and this was a new place and somewhere that I should have probably done a lot more research on and not just cowboyed it.
Even the fully experienced, the super knowledgeable, the super well-trained can make a bad judgment call.
Yeah, on one of the biggest days, if not the biggest day of the year, and one of the biggest storms and all these elements coming in, you still you got to have everything checked off.
Well, it makes for a hell of a story. So a couple things, and then we're going to move on. But cool. Dude, it's just so wild because you showed me some of the photos, and so because nobody else will see them.
No photos.
No photos. You can't. I could not tell where it was, but there was the photos of you in the water. It looked like somebody swimming at Nazaré. It was just the water was. Dude, and it was your head.
Yeah, it was
super gnarly. So I'm going to close it with this. You told a story of what somebody said to you when you got up on the cliff. Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, when I got up there were a lot of people that were watching and stuff. And when I got to this area, and this person kind of went by me and went there were a couple people. One person said, I don't know how you surf, man, because I didn't see you catch one wave, but you're a hell of a swimmer,
That was the quote. That's what I was looking for. I love that. I mean, dude, kudos. I mean, granted, maybe some strategic learnings came from that, but your ability to swim through, it's a scary consideration for most people. In that circumstance would have a very different outcome.
Yeah, and I think you've got a lot of people that are thrill takers that are getting into big wave surfing, and I give it all credit to my dad. My dad brought me up as a waterman and said he didn't exactly sanction me being a big wave surfer. I don't think he wanted to see me go eat crap at the wedge and all that, but he said if it's a good idea for you to be a very, very good overall waterman, which means swimmer, paddler, surfer, all of it combined, and knowledge of these spots and areas, how to get out, lifeguarding knowledge. It's good to have all of that if you're going to do this. You can't just hop off, a plane from somewhere, as Bruce Brown says, and jump out there and think you're going to dazzle everybody. If you don't have you can want to go do these crazy big waves, but if you're gonna be faced in a perilous situation sooner than later, if not many times in your career. So the training paid off huge
time. And nobody trains harder than you around here for this that I know. I know other people do, but listen, you really ramped us right into the area that I wanted to start with, because a lot of people, especially around here, Spence, know you because of a lot of the exploits, the big waves, the paddling, the fundraising, and the tie-in that we'll talk a lot about. But I'm guessing most people don't know where you came from. And that conversation about what your dad, how he brought you up, is exactly where we want to go. We want to start with your family, because I think you grew up
just right down the street.
Right down the street. As
Dover Shores. Yeah.
And I live in Dover Shores. So
on Oxford Lane.
Oh, okay. We'll talk, because I used to live right. Okay. So so tell more. And let me say, it's a little earlier than I was planning, but you mentioned your dad real fondly. You lost your dad this year.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, last year in October. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a good segue, because I have nothing but amazing, loving memories of my father. And I'm so lucky that I got to be raised in this amazing town. And that I think that I wrote my dad's eulogy, and a lot of it I think he always just wanted his family to be in one place, and he wanted his family to be healthy and happy. And he did that for me and has done that for me my whole life. And I just have nothing but admiration and love and the best memories because of how he raised us. And one huge gift was being raised in Southern California and being able to go to the beach and being able to be a lifeguard, just all these things that he really wanted for us, he gave to us. So
good.
yeah. And I was born at Hoag Hospital. I have an older brother, Travis, who you know really well.
Love Travis.
And, you see him at Keene Coffee probably at 5 a.m. every morning. And we grew up just on Oxford Lane. My dad's an architect. My mom's a real estate agent who I now work with. And we had a great family that loved the ocean and loved everything that this beautiful town offers. And that's one thing, my mom and dad taught us to appreciate is not everyone gets to grow up right on the coast. Not everyone gets to do junior lifeguards or be a lifeguard as a job, There's so many cool things about this place that, some people, I think everyone appreciates it for the most part, but you can kind of take for granted. And then if you go somewhere else, you realize how good you've got it here. So
in spades, right?
Yeah.
You can go anywhere in the world and you come back here and you're like, it's as nice as anywhere I've ever been.
Yeah.
Like, we're so blessed. And from a paddling perspective, from a surf perspective, we're just home base for a lot of, you can go surf right now. You can ski tomorrow.
We've got an island
that we can
you
paddle
to.
Which we
We've
will
got
definitely talk
Mexico
about.
and the border. You can cross over and go surf waves there. Who knows? Maybe that's the wave I was talking about.
Maybe. Nobody
Smoke and
will ever know. You just kind of covered a lot of it about the family and everything else and growing up here, and you mentioned junior guards and lifeguarding. So let's go right in there. So what was the genesis? You said your dad was really focused on you being a well-rounded waterman.
Yeah.
How did that start?
He was never a lifeguard himself, but he would always come down. He grew up in Chino originally, and he would come down, and he first learned to surf on the south side of the Newport Pier. So not Blackie's, the south side of the pier, which is actually where, Newport Lifeguard headquarters is. And he always had such admiration for lifeguards. He thought they were, they're heroes, and he raised my brother and I and kind of like really without like saying, you gotta be a lifeguard, he would just be like, that's a great summer job. You're already at the beach, like this junior lifeguard program you're doing, you'd be great at it, just really encouraged us.
So he primed the pump early with that idea.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, so my brother, after we had done junior lifeguards, my brother, being older, was the first one to try out. And I remember being at his tryout and watching him. It's crazy. I don't know. I haven't been to a tryout the last couple of years because I think I've been working, but it seemed to me like my brother's tryout and even my tryout, they were stormy days in like March. And I remember vividly watching my brother's day and going like, that is so intense. Like they're all so competitive. There's a bunch of water polo players, swimmers, surfers, all just really battling it out for these coveted positions, in the lifeguarding, Newport Beach Lifeguard Department. And my brother made it in, and I remember my dad and mom just being so stoked that their son was in the training class, And then that's where my brother, I think, really clicked in because he applied the BLA Basic Life Saving Academy. He applied all of, his previous knowledge in junior guards and study skills and everything, and that's why he did so well in the class. When I saw my brother do that and achieve that, it lit the fire in me. I was like, I'm going to become a Newport Beach lifeguard. Not because of, I wanted to show him up or anything, but I also saw how much he enjoyed it. And I remember watching, and I said this actually in my dad's eulogy, my mom, my dad, and I rolled up to 17th Street one evening, and my brother had been at the Bay Tower. He was a rookie guard, and he had been at the Bay Tower all day, and there was big swell. And then they moved him over. And I remember we were going down just to visit Trav, We thought he was at the Bay Tower. And then we go to the Bay Tower, and then he's not there. And they said, "Oh, your son's over on the main beach now," and it was like, "Oh, what? It's red flag and Trav's guarding, like, and the sun's about to set." And we rolled up after parking, and my mom, my dad, and I watched my brother, and the buoy was down, like the buoy was gone. He was in the water, and he was making a rescue. And I'm like, "What? Travis is out there?" You know, my brother's like not as like, he doesn't like big waves or anything, but when the stuff hit the fan, Trav was on it. He was a great lifeguard. He just retired after 20 years, and he's out there making this rescue in this rip, pulls this guy in, gets him to the beach, and it's like we're his audience members. We're standing there, and then the truck rolls up, and it was one of our supervisors, Mike Halfite at the time. He gets out, and he just starts applauding my brother, and it was the most proud, like, come to fruition, like all the years of getting raised, being at the beach, and you see him making this rad rescue in front of his whole family.
That's so cool.
It was so cool.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
You know, and so let's go back real quick. So there's a lane, people would say, like in Newport, there's a lot of kids that go through junior guard program. We're blessed with having one of the most elite, amazing, well-supported, community-engaged junior guard programs in the country.
Absolutely.
Bar none.
Yeah.
And there's, how many kids go through that every summer? It's like 1,200?
It has to have like
big number.
grown, like doubled since I was in it. But I would say that's
it's
like
a big number.
1,500, 1,200.
And so you go through that. And so did you and Trav both do that multiple years growing up?
Yes.
So it's such a great program.
Yeah.
And then oftentimes that elite, did you play a sport in high school?
Yeah, both my brother and I swam and played water polo.
So
we swam because we had to. We loved water.
I was on the same, I grew up with the same programs you guys did.
Yeah.
And so it's very common for the junior lifeguards to have a lot of kids that are in the polo and swim program, a lot of surfers, a lot of everybody's, but the people that are in the that are in the polo swim path and the junior guard path very often go down the lifeguard path.
Absolutely.
How old was Trav and how old were you when you became lifeguards?
16.
See, that's what people have to understand. Like the story about Trav, that's what Trav was 16.
16-year-old kid.
Making rescues on any age people.
Saving a grown man, you know, who goes, "No, I'm good, man. Like, don't tell me what to do." And then he goes out, gets stuck in a rip, and all of a sudden needs that 16-year-old guy or girl with the buoy. Take the buoy, man, and then, gets rescued.
That's the beauty of these junior guard programs, because not only do people go down the path of lifeguarding, but anybody that's grown up in that has such an ocean awareness and ocean confidence and competence.
Yes.
So, I mean, we're fortunate to work with them on the side in some ways, which we'll talk about. But again, what is provided by that program to these kids is unbelievable. What's funny is my son went through it for 1 year, he and a couple buddies, and it was a really cold summer and they hated it.
Yeah.
So he never did it again. My daughter never went through. My youngest, but I was always like, of course my kids are going to be junior guard kids. Of course they're going to. Yeah. And it just wasn't in the cards. It is what it is.
And it's different, you know, like I'm not a football fan, but I have really good buddies who played football and are great athletes, and that's their jam, you know. For sure. My girlfriend's a runner. I suck at running. I'm a paddler, but I cheer her on when she runs, and she cheers me on when I paddle. It's just,
that's the way it should be.
Everyone's got a different
beautiful
deal.
So let's do this. So I mean, the lifeguarding thing is a big one. Let's keep going. Tell us about your experience. You talked about Travis. Talk about your experience lifeguarding here in Newport.
Yeah, so I had a great training class. Like I said, it was like I remember trying out, and it was stormy. Had training class. I remember really just having to apply myself for those training weekends. It was like really rigorous. It was, I think, 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. Saturdays, Sundays for 5 weekends. To me, that was crazy hard, you know? And then just the best thing for me was when I finally got my own tower and I was like done doing the training part, and I was able to, because it is so unbelievable. Your responsibility as a 16-year-old, the beach, the whole beach, you know, sometimes if a tower's not open next to you, you've got over a half a mile, maybe a mile of water that you are in charge of on either side of you. And I just have some of the most incredible memories of people that I worked with, people that, you know, supervised me. I have one story in particular. I remember when I was driving the truck with a friend of mine, Nick Espinoza. I was working at Malarkey's the night on Saturday nights until like 2 a.m. And then he was working at Landmark over in, remember that
Corona
spot
Del Mar.
in Corona Del Mar? We were both bar backing, and then we would have the early morning, like 7 a.m. shift, and we would drive the truck together. We'd be so tired, but we were still doing it. And that one Sunday evening, I remember the sun was almost set, and we were in Division 2, which is from the Wedge to the Newport Pier. And we were kind of up by the point, 15th area. And we got a call and it said like mass rescue 17th Street. And we just jammed over. And I remember we rolled up, big old rip. Waves weren't huge, but this rip just popped right there. And there were probably 15 people in it. Oof. And it was me and him, and we jump out, chuck our stuff off, grab our buoys. And I remember we went through probably 13 of those 15 people and kind of got them in. 2 girls at the end of that rip, I think I went right and he went left. We got to those girls when their heads were 1.5 feet underwater. If we were a millisecond late, we would have lost both of those girls. I remember getting to the beach with him, and we got those girls in. They were kind of,
heaving up water,
aspirating, and I remember taking a moment and looking around me and seeing the people, how shocked they were. Me and him were in shock almost, and I remember going to myself, I saved a life today. Without a doubt, him and I saved their lives that day. They would have been gone.
How old were you?
I was 18.
That
maybe,
leaves a mark, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like from a sense of pride and like the ability to understand what you're capable of. And
And just to know that you
awesome.
help somebody, humanity, like you're like, I saved that person today, because guess what? I might need help getting down a mountain one day. I have no idea what I'm doing when I go to the mountains, but I sure as hell know what I'm doing when I enter the ocean for the most part. And it was cool to know that I helped somebody,
Yeah.
And I did that on multiple levels, and they all do that. Every lifeguard does that. That's why I have so much love and respect for him, like my father did, who wasn't even a lifeguard, but he just had so much love and admiration for lifeguards.
How long did you guard for?
I was a guard for 6 years. And then I started doing other things. I started, went back to school. I got a journalism degree. I started working for a magazine. I was a writer. And then I started working for Billabong for a little bit. Had a little background kind of surfing for them, going over the falls at the Wedge. They liked that, so they put a sticker on my board. And have done a lot of other things. But
So you went to school. Where did you go to college?
I went to Cal State Long Beach.
Long Beach. My dad would be proud.
Yeah. The Dirtbags, the 49ers.
So funny.
I think they're the Sharks now.
I don't even know. So you said journalism.
Journalism, yeah.
Why journalism? What was the draw?
I really liked writing at the time. I had gone to OCC for 4 or 5 years. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. I kind of just wanted to surf and maybe work at a surf shop. I didn't really have a lot of drive, to be honest. I didn't know. All my friends were getting economics degrees or whatever, and I just figured I might do that just to get a degree. And I took a class at Orange Coast College on creative nonfiction writing, and it opened kind of my world up to what you could write on, because my dad also encouraged my brother and I always to read and write and really just keep our writing going. I actually when I was in 3rd grade, I was going to Our Lady Queen of Angels, and there was a writing contest, and I won the writing contest. I wrote something called the story was called The Mouse in Fiction, and it was about a mouse that gets lost in the fiction section. And
super fun.
And I got it published, but my dad would always point that out. He'd go you're a good writer, and so he encouraged us to do that. And this class that I took at OCC, the teacher was amazing, and it really just inspired me to get a degree in that. And although I don't, necessarily write for a profession anymore, I attribute, a lot of those writing skills I use in emails, and I still have a journal and all that. And if I go and have a crazy situation in the ocean, I'll definitely write about it. You better believe I had a 6-page long journal entry after that situation.
Cool. See, I didn't know that. So this is what's fun, because who would have known that? So this is almost like for all the parents out there whose kids want to grow up surfing, like my parents, they grew up in New York and Ohio. They did not think that surfing was a sport back when I was growing up. So they said, listen, you either, and all I did was surf when I was young, after I gave up like ball sports and everything. Once I started surfing, that's all I wanted to do. And they said, surfing isn't a sport. You have to, when you go to high school, you have to play a real sport, or you can take the bus. You don't get to drive.
Oh,
and I was like, oh. So a lot of my friends were playing polo, and that's why I played polo, because I had to play a sport. And well, let's just say that I was never that good, but it taught me a lot because of playing polo and swimming and surfing, I tried out for the Newport Beach YEPS, the Youth Employment Program, and I became a seasonal guard for 1 year. But what was really interesting for me, just kind of a personal story, is I learned during that time that working in the towers and being on, because as a lifeguard, you were on. You described it like you may have the whole beach. It's your responsibility. And it took a passion, the ocean, for me, turned it into a job, and I did not enjoy it anymore. Like I loved the training and I loved the idea of it, but whenever I would go surf anymore, whenever I'd go to the beach anymore, I was always on. I'm sure you're always on. I bet you never turn off. You're always. And as the Hawaiian lifeguards that I know always say, like, they gave me a Hawaiian lifeguard shirt, and I'm like, I can't wear it. I'm not a lifeguard. They're like, have you ever made a rescue? I'm like, yeah. Could you rescue somebody right now? Sure. Then you get to wear it.
It's that saying, like, once a lifeguard, always a lifeguard, you know?
But it really took the fun, and it ends up being a trend for me in my life. I've learned, there's some people that say if you love something you do, you never work a day in your life. That's what you hear. But for other people like me, it's like, if you love something, don't turn it into a job, because it takes the passion out of it and turns it into
stresses you out too much.
Yeah, totally. So I went the other way, and I did not re-up. I didn't train. I just guarded that one summer. I did not go anymore because it just wasn't for me.
No, and I can totally see that. Like, a lot of people have that, relationship with it, where if it switches to a job, you're like, I can't go to the beach anymore because I'm always trying to call somebody out of a rip over here, and can't really just sit and stay still and enjoy or take it all in.
Well, this is the Spencer Pirdy edition of the Passion Project, but I'll tell this story just because you'll appreciate it. So I was a mid-pack swimmer. I was a mid-pack runner during all the training. But when they put us on the prone rescue boards, all of a sudden I was out in front. And I'd never been out in front with that group. And it was probably because I surfed a lot, or whatever it was about it, I was super comfortable. But it was the only time I was out in front. So years later, when a prone board showed up in front of me, I was like, oh, I got to get on that. I have this memory of, like, I was average here, average there, but that was the one thing I was good at in lifeguarding, was I was on a board.
You got those paddle muscles.
Something.
Yeah,
something.
We can see them.
Something. I'll take whatever I can get. So, so you then go from guarding to journalism and working, Billabong, and you're working for some of the local surf rags. Where did you think you wanted to end up? Like, if you were in school, did you think you wanted to be a writer? Did you want to work for Surfer Mag? Like, what?
Yeah, that's definitely what I was thinking. I thought, like, I'd love to. I actually interviewed at, like, Surfing Magazine and Surfer. Went down there and talked with those guys, and I ended up working for Bliss Magazine. But, like, I thought, I'm gonna make a living writing, and travel and do this and that. And it just didn't work out that way. I mean, we've all seen
what magazines?
The state of print and what's happened to it, which, it is what it is. But I'm a firm believer, especially in hindsight, like, I am where I am now for a reason. And I really, really love and enjoy what I'm doing right now in real estate. My mom has been in this industry for 27 years. I learned so much from her on a daily basis. It's kind of funny, us working together. It's like we're talking like coworkers for 90% of the day, and then it's like I got to switch off and, oh, hey mom, like talk like mom and son for that other little portion of time. But it's so enjoyable,
That's great. I mean, you might remember I worked with my dad, or my dad and I worked together for over 20 years, and he was in that chair a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I was part of the reason I'm actually even doing this, because I love to get the stories of really cool people that are doing good stuff. But it started with, I wanted to get my parents.
Yeah.
And for what you were talking about with your dad, like, I wanted to get my parents so my kids can get sit down and watch
They've got such amazing stories,
really cool.
And if your dad's anything like my dad, they're a little too humble to like tell it, you know, they're not on their phones saying what they ate for lunch today or whatever. They're kind of hard to pry open. And yeah, just like you
Very
did
much.
having your dad on here, I tried to really tell my dad's story in his eulogy, because my dad's done so much and so many amazing things. He was an architect, but he focused on all these institutions all up and down the UC, Cal State, California coast, and you know, did hospitals, did the Newport Beach Public Library.
No way.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know these things about him, and I really felt like this like determination to tell his story and to let people know he was this humble architect. He wouldn't tell you, you know, what he did, but he's done a lot of stuff.
Rad. Love
Yeah.
that. That's so cool. I'm
Yeah.
so glad you got the chance. Like, it sounds like you and Trav like really got a lot from him and embody it every day, which is awesome.
And Travis does it on a daily basis with
He's
his teaching, you know.
Super inspirational guy. Like,
Yeah.
I love Travis. He's such a good
Nothing
guy.
but good vibes.
Yeah, love that. Listen, so when did big wave surfing come into the picture?
So
Was it during lifeguarding, after life? Did you grow?
It was kind of all around, you know. I remember opening up, my dad subscribed to the Surfer's Journal, which in my eyes is the holy Bible
For sure.
of surfing, like publications. And thank God it's still around. And I remember when I was like probably 11 or 12, I first started surfing when I was 6. And probably 11 or 12, a Surfer's Journal came in the mail. And I opened it up, and there was an article on Mavericks in there. And Mavericks looked to me like this terrifying, wild place. They even had like a photo that was like a spread of Jay Moriarty, Jeff Clark, and like a few others, maybe Grant Washburn. And they were like laying on the reef at Mavericks. It was shot during really like a negative low tide. And it looked like they were dead on the reef. Like just this crazy, foreboding, like looking photo. But then as I was like, Jesus, what is this? Where are they? It looked like outer space. And then the photos were these little specks on these massive waves. And I remember thinking, man, that scares the shit out of me, but I might maybe want to try that one day, you know? And that was like the little spark, that Surfer's Journal.
when you were 12.
Yeah, I was like, and well, because I was swimming, I was surfing. I remember I was watching The Endless Summer 2, watching Laird at Jaws, thinking that was the coolest thing ever. I would catch a wave at Tohini. My dad would push me in, and when I was 6, I remember thinking I was on a 20-foot wave, and it was probably a 2-inch whitewater. But
You know, there's a couple interesting observations I'm going to make. One, you know, growing up here in Newport, it's a very short paddle, and it's typically very small waves.
yeah,
And yet some people like you go, I want more. Like I've always been like, give me 6 foot and glassy. I'm totally good.
Yeah.
I do not need big and scary and heavy and gnarly. But there's definitely people, the wedge crew, and wedge when I was a kid, it was super underground. The Bill Sharps and that whole wedge crew, it was not like it is today where everybody.
it was even underground when
super
I was a
underground.
kid, you know, like to an extent. And it's sorry.
And then no. And then the other part, just something I want to shine a light on, is Newport's also off for many and maybe most in surf. It's kind of a one-trick pony. Most people grow up riding shortboards there, and that's all they ride forever, unless you're the Blackies crew. But it was never like a ride anything like San Diego and other areas. Like people are like totally ride anything.
You've got more diversity. You got beach breaks, reefs, big waves.
But there's also a break between, for a very long time, it was water polo. It was only like water polo and surfers that went guarding. It wasn't pure surfers. You wouldn't get people that were just surf. It really seemed to be, it was like you were a competent swimmer, competitive, and you surfed, so you went that way. But
and I feel like when Trav and I were going through the BLA, Basic Life Saving Academy, it was a majority swimmers and water polo players. Only more like Travis and I were surfers, and there were other surfers, but it was mostly swimmers and water polo players. Only until the last 5 years, recently, I have seen some of the best surfers, a David O'Keefe or the Clark brothers, you know, they've become lifeguards and they're really good surfers, and they're not playing polo necessarily. They just know the ocean well, and they've probably done well in the tryouts because they know how to read the ocean. I've seen plenty of pool swimmers do the lifeguard tryout and they start veering off, because they're used to having a black line below them or, calmer water. So,
I really think that what we're going to get to in just a minute is a dovetailing of that. I really do think that some of what you are kind of the leader of in this kind of new focus on prone paddling and the tide, like we'll get there. I don't want to get ahead of it, but I do think that this pivot has been happening, but because there's a reason for it. Like I think you're part of that. So you've been doing big wave surfing a long time. When did prone paddling come in? We'll get to prone paddling. Is paddling, for anybody that doesn't know, it's like paddling a really big surfboard, but it's big and it's meant for going long distances in the ocean. So when did you start that?
So prone paddling for me, I had some big wave guns and I would do like a seal buoy paddle, from Big Corona out to the seal buoy and back, which is super kind of sharky feeling at times. My friend and I have a story about that. It was, that's what really sparked it for me was the death of Ben Carlson and the Bang Dig Go. And that happening, that was literally the reason that I started prone paddling. So for me, the segue into that story.
Let's go.
I was in July of 2014. I was down surfing some big waves in Puerto Escondido, which is one of my favorite places on earth. And it was a massive swell. It was July. I was down there for the 4th of July, but the day that was the most massive, one of the biggest days of surf I've ever had with, a swell down there was July 6th.
Hold on, because I know where you're going with that date.
Yeah.
How did you get introduced to surfing down there?
So I got introduced by the man himself.
That's what I thought.
By Ben Carlson and by Skeeter Leaper. Who else? Our buddy Fuzzy.
These are all guys that you lifeguarded with. Is that right?
Yeah. And Ben, for me, when I was a lifeguard, was every bit of a best friend, a mentor, someone I had looked up to before he even knew who I was. I knew who he was. He was well known in the department. He was just the stud lifeguard. He surfed big waves. He traveled. He was just known by everyone and liked by everyone. And he helped us all out with jobs at Malarkeys and Wahoos and all over. So you knew him beforehand. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you were down there. This was the beginning of June.
And I got to know Ben in lifeguarding, and then we became really good buddies. I would go hang out with him after work. We'd do, go run his ski down to DMJ's and so I remember my first trip to Puerto Escondido, which was a few years before this. It was in like 2010. Ben had linked me up with, and Skeeter as well, with Coco Nogales, famous big wave surfer, pioneer from there. Oscar Moncada, the late and great Oscar Moncada. Edmund Morales, who's a professional photographer and just a great human from down there. Lucano Hinkle, guys like that. So
Ben was already connected with
him. He was
right?
already connected. He'd been going down there for a while, and all those guys just loved him.
Yeah,
And so I remember showing up my first trip off the plane, and they're like, "There's Edwin's there to pick me up," and I'm like, "What the heck?" And then Oscar's shaking my hand in the lineup, and it was all because of Ben in these introductions, and that's what I think people forget about that. Good friends, they don't just bring you whatever. They're good at like giving you like light into their world and to these special places all over the world. And then when you go there and you experience these amazing experiences, they have friends that you've gotten introduced to, like just these connections. And I think that's the key word here is the connections Ben had and I had with Ben and that he shared are just so priceless. And I still have them today. I think we all have connections because of him, to be honest, especially in this town.
So thanks for sharing that because I knew there was some backstory. So you were down surfing. So
I was down there. It was a huge day of surf. Got some big waves, big wipeouts, exhausted by the end of the day. And it's a 2-hour time difference. And it's kind of spotty reception. I'm going to bed. And my phone lights up and it says Trav. It's my older brother. And this is July 6th of 2014. I answer the phone and I'm like, what's up? And it was just weird for him to be calling me at that time. And I'll never forget, he just goes, Ben died today. And I was like, what? Wait, what? I mean, and for anyone who doesn't know Ben Carlson like I did, this would be like Superman dying. You know, this is like the best of the best, the Maverick of Top Gun. He was the all-time guard. You know, he was so on it. Everyone respected him. His physical abilities were unmatched. He was just so on it. And for my older brother to tell me that he died, I just was like, what? And it was a short conversation, and then it was click. And I sat there in bed, and the next morning woke up to, it was pumping again, a little smaller, and half of the town down in mainland Mexico, you're on the border almost by Guatemala in Puerto Escondido, half the town knows about it because they all know and love Ben. And everyone, I remember that day, firing waves, but it couldn't stop us from all going out the back, grabbing hands, sitting in a circle, and paying respects for him. And so then came back home and got, you know, the full story of everything that had happened. And you know, not only was it was so tragic that our friend Ben had passed away, but my God, the way that he did it in saving another. I mean, it's just a story that obviously this whole town, this whole world knows about and will be, you know, remembered forever. But the way I saw the community come together and you know, be there for one another and for his family and to also to bring back, I think at that time there was a little bit of, oh, lifeguards are just out there getting a tan, or we pay lifeguards a lot, you know, whatever. This really, I think, sobered a lot of critics up and showed them what lifeguards do for this community. And a lot of it is it's quiet. You know, these rescues aren't on the news every night. These wet preventatives where somebody goes up, you know, a guard goes up and tells a lady, hey, 2 feet further and you're gonna, you know, get pulled out into that rip. Can you please come back in? Little things like that don't get broadcast. And I think the whole community realized what a special thing it was that Ben Carlson had done and what lifeguards do on a regular basis. So it really brought the community together and just on a really like grassroots level too.
There's a beautiful, thank you for sharing that, all of that. There's a beautiful movie that people that we know made called Heart of Water.
Heart of Water, yeah.
And it tells the whole story and it's powerful. And so that quote that you just shared is the one that you shared once before, I get chicken skin, that sticks with me. I like the majority of the community, didn't know Ben. I know all about him now. I'm blessed to be friends with a lot of people because of him. Yeah. And his legacy is incredibly powerful in our community and on a much wider scale, which we'll talk about. But I never knew the man. I never knew his name before his passing. What I knew was that day of surf was for Newport. It was unbelievable. I had been paddling a ton that day. Yep. The rips, like it was kind of like what you were describing. Like it was unlike anything that we see, the way the water was moving. And in that movie, the gentleman that he saved speaks about it. And it's so powerful and gnarly, but his legacy. So you've said a lot about
I wasn't here for that swell. Obviously I was in Mexico, but the same swell that we were surfing was moving up the coast. And man, that was one of the most powerful swells I've ever experienced down there. And it came up here, you know.
Yeah. And you talked about community. Community really rallied. Like, absolutely. Not only was it an awareness, as you said, like it shined a light on what lifeguards do.
I still remember that paddle out was just unbelievable. You know, through all the tears and the fogginess of that, I've never seen so many people along the pier, along the beach, in the water, holding hands, like unbelievable. And then his ceremony that was up in Upper West Newport. I mean, the amount of people and the outpour from the other lifeguard agencies that came from all around California to be there for the Newport guards that day so they could all be at the ceremony for Ben. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, and the community of Newport Beach has galvanized behind the concept of what he did and that he gave the ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah.
And now we have this incredible statue down at the Newport Pier, and there's the lifeguard headquarters is named after him, and the Ben Carlson Foundation, which we'll speak of, is doing all kinds of wonderful things. It's so top of mind all the time. I mean, we see stickers on all the cars, like it's still, and it's 9 years later. But so we'll get to that because it's part of your story. What did you do? You did something big and really incredible and compelling, and it's had legs. It's continued. But what did you do and why?
So a year after Ben's passing, he was such a crazy, you would see him on PCH going from one job, biking 10 miles to his next job, working all night. He had endless energy, like a tank, like no other. And the research swims, every year he would be the fastest swimmer in the whole department. Like he was a stud. He did an Ironman. Like,
and real quick, where did he grow up?
So Ben grew up in Riverside.
Isn't that incredible?
And then like there's a stigma with that, or
Yeah.
I think it's bashed, it's gone. But there used to be a stigma with like, oh, you're from Riverside, which goes back to the whole silly,
Localism.
insecurity of, oh, you're not from around here, or I've never seen you before. But yeah, so Ben was from Riverside, but he came here and you wouldn't have known it because he took to Newport and to the waves and to lifeguarding and to how this community was. Like he was just a natural at everything he did, and so likable. And he was never arrogant or cocky either. Sure, he let all of his surfing and all that do the talking for him, and you could see that he was one of the best, but you would never hear it out of his mouth,
Love that.
And that was what was so cool. And you couldn't help but love the guy. Sure, if you were at the bar and he was talking to your girlfriend, you'd be like, dang it, man. But like you still wouldn't go off on the guy or anything because he was just a badass.
Love that. So what did you do?
So the 1 year after he had passed, I had this, my friend Tyler Hosseini had done this charity 50-mile run earlier in the year, and it was just for a random charity. I forget what it was, but it was really incredible. I thought he ran 50 miles and we were all there to cheer him on. And I thought like, man, I need to do something like that for Ben. Like, sure, we have his legacy that's going to continue to live on, but I want to do something that involves the waterman like type qualities that he embodied, something that involves our surroundings and stuff that we loved. He was always in the water, always training. And so I didn't look no further than Catalina Island. And I thought it would be really cool to paddle and to raise funds for his foundation that it was just being formed, and to try to just, keep his legacy, see if anyone wanted to do it with me. And so at first I was like, I'm just going to do a paddle. And then I kind of thought more and more and slept on it. And I thought, well, I probably need to do something. Like, it was almost like Ben talking to me going like, come on, what?
Is that all you got?
Yeah. Is that all you got? You got to do something more than that. And I was like, all right. And I heard of the Bark crew.
Paddle, run, paddle.
Paddle, run, paddle. Up in, it's Jack Bark, Joe Bark. You've done it, Mark Schuline.
It's my favorite thing.
I think Pat Towersy did it one year. And like, so they paddle across the channel on a Friday. They do a marathon on a Saturday, and they paddle back on a Sunday. And, I knew they'd done it that route, but no one had ever, to my knowledge, done it coming from Newport. And I thought that's a great thing we could do. And so...
You know why nobody's done it from Newport? Because it's 10 miles longer.
Because it sucks.
We do the short distance. It's like we do the 22 across.
Yeah.
He did the 32 across. That's why.
So it was my own spin on it, and I was thinking, what should I call it? And my friend Tyler's like, dude, the Ben did go, and it just made perfect sense. In that first year, it was me.
Sorry to stop you. Ben did go. What's that modeled after?
It's after Eddie did go. The Eddie Aikau story of Eddie jumping.
Eddie would go, right? Eddie would go?
Right. Is it Eddie would go?
I think it's Eddie would go.
Eddie would go. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So
I get them mixed up, and I should.
They're little. That's the difference.
They're different, and I have respect for both of them immensely. So I don't mean to mix them up, but
no worries.
But so it was modeled after that. And then I left on a Friday. My friend Carson Hill was nice enough to be my guide boat with his dog Kai going out. And we left on a Friday from the Hills gas dock at like 5:30 in the morning. And it was actually a really beautiful day. And we, I had this Jamie Mitchell 12-foot prone board that I was using.
Oh, you did it on a 12-footer.
I did it on a 12-foot going out. And it was, Jamie had let me use that board. And then
Jamie Mitchell, 10-time Molokai world champion paddler and world-class big wave surfer.
Yes.
Friend of yours.
Overall, yeah, friend and
Nicest
overall
guy,
amazing
badass.
human.
Yep.
And his wife as well. They're great people. Cassie, shout out to the Mitchell fam. And so I start over on this Friday, and we get to about like 4 miles out, and it starts to get windy. And the west wind picks up, and my friend Carson had to go take his dog. For some reason, all 28 miles, he was good, but the dog had to pee the last 4 miles. And so he goes in, and he was going to pick up my buddy Andrew Nahan, who is in Avalon. And this was my first time, ladies and gentlemen, actually ever going to Avalon. So I'm getting in there, and I'm asking Carson, where do I go? He points me to Descanso Beach Club. And so I start paddling that way. Well, in between the time he had to go let the dog pee and pick up my friend, the wind came up, and it got pretty choppy, and he missed me coming back out. Oh. And so I go to the Descanso, and I'm waiting for them. Long story short, they thought they lost me out there. It took them an hour and a half to find me. I was in a mooring, and it all worked out. The next day, I do the marathon on a Saturday, and I thought that was going to be the easiest part. I thought the paddling was going to be hard, a total of 60 miles, and it was horrible. It was 90 degrees at one point during the day. I had to walk the last 4 miles coming downhill. It sucked.
So for anybody not watching, that's one of my favorite marathons on the planet is the Catalina Marathon.
It's not mine.
But it's not easy. It's a ton of elevation. It's all trail. It's spectacularly gorgeous, but it can be really hot. I've done it during really hot. I've done it during rain.
That's gnarly.
But when you paddle across and you have to paddle back afterward, how was the paddle the next day? Your legs are a little tired that day.
Yeah, in the final, after the marathon, I sat at Blue Water there, right on the water. And so for those who don't know, you kind of want dead wind, obviously glassy conditions. Well, it was howling south wind that night, which is if you're coming from, they
don't even worry about
it. If you're coming from Avalon trying to get to Newport, south wind's the devil wind. It's the worst possible wind you could get. It's gonna totally
no wind
mess
is good
you up.
wind. No, there's no such thing as a good wind on that crossing.
So I'm thinking, it'll die, and then I wake up in the morning at 4 a.m. and it is howling even harder. And luckily I had my friend Dave McCabe, who was a guard at the time and friends with Ben, and none other than Aaron Pearsall, Olympic gold medalist backstroker. And they were going to accompany me back. And that was a hard day, but having them, made it really special. And I remember finishing that first Bended Go. It really was I think the community kind of heard about it, and it sparked what we have today, which is now 8 years running. And every year we've gotten more and more people involved, and we've kind of tidied up. It's no more cowboy, just go and figure it out. We're safe. And then the biggest thing is the money that we are raising every year exponentially has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger, and what it's going towards. And we can speak to that with the foundation. It's going towards water safety on a global level, on a national level, and on a very local level too, all of that. And the scholarships and the great things we're doing. And it's all because of one guy, Ben Carlson.
Yeah. Well, I would say two guys, Ben Carlson and Spencer Pirdy. That's your legacy, brother. Do you know how much money that's brought in since you started doing the Ben Did Go?
I don't. Do you know the exact numbers? You have it?
It's let's just say it's very, very close to $500,000.
Awesome. That's really cool. That's stoked.
So
that's really
Ben
cool to hear.
is the impetus, and his loss motivated a lot of people to do a lot of really good things. The foundation's incredible. But the Bended Go, my friend, is you get the credit for that.
Well,
one.
and I think we tend to, and I'm guilty of it, but we talk about Ben's death, and it's somber. But I think looking back 8 years back now and seeing where we've come, and you see it every year when we do the paddle, how happy people are and how it's this big goal that we accomplish, whether it's the fundraising or the channel crossing. And you can be involved on a boat. You can be involved by donating. You can be involved by paddling. Like he's done this for all of us. This is one guy who's done this for all of us, and he's inspired us. He inspired me to start it, but he's inspired everyone around us, his story, to just be better people and be adventurous and push ourselves and help others.
It's such a good message. Thank you for nailing that. And here's the part that's pretty amazing, is the majority of the people that do the paddle and are involved in the paddle and fundraise for it did not know Ben.
Yeah.
So it's all by way of his legacy and the people like you and Skeeter and the other guys and his family. Let's talk real quickly about Ben's family.
Yeah.
Who are some of my favorite people.
They're the best.
And they're so
Terry, Chris, Jake, Steph.
Yeah.
The boys.
And they're still super passionate about the campaign and the goals. They're so involved in it. And sometimes I sit back kind of in awe because we get to do it for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
That was their son, their brother, their uncle. Like it's super powerful. And I love that family. They're such good people.
They're the best.
So good. Other people, there's all these other people that do the paddle. What do you think inspires, or why do they aspire to do this, to be part of the Ben Carlson paddle, the Bended Go? What do people, we had 109 people this year.
Yeah.
What's their motivation? What's driving them?
So I'll be honest. I think, and even for myself, the first year, I think you first get, the story of Ben Carlson, and that's inspiring in itself. But to be honest, you get a true, it's a selfish endeavor in a way too, right? You want to push yourself, and you see if you haven't crossed that channel, and you are a waterman or woman, and you've always wanted to, you challenge yourself. It's an inner challenge. It absolutely is, and I think that's the catalyst of it. What we do differently than like a Catalina Classic or any other traditional paddle race is that we try to get you to take that inspiration and that drive to cross it for yourself. And then we put Ben Carlson in front of you and what he's done and what we are doing as a foundation now and helping others and helping save lives just like Ben did. And we put that also in the mix. And I think that's what makes it really special, and you get that drive to train and to do it for yourself. Yes, you have to have that to cross that channel. Otherwise, you're not going to. You're going to lose, you won't train right. You won't have good nutrition because you're not going to be thinking about it to get yourself across. But when you have the fundraising goals and what that fundraising is going towards and helping others and saving lives, then it becomes a little bit more outside of yourself and about helping others. And that you can't get from a normal race or other events, Yeah. So I think that's what makes us unique and what truly, at the end of it all, why we have, I've recently, in the past few years, really taken time after to look at the people that have done it for the first time, whether they're embracing with their their families or their kids on the beach, and it's different than like yes, I accomplished my marathon on my own, I did it. It's like they take a deep breath, they realize yes, they just did an amazing physical feat, but they also have in their mind that they just helped the greater good, water safety, and they made Ben Carlson proud.
Hallelujah. It's yes, I think you nailed it. I always say, and you always have me stand up and talk to everybody, because I always say the first part of it is it's a big accomplishment. The second part is you're doing something good by way of, most endurance sports are fairly selfish.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're doing it for yourself. You're doing it, it's a lot of time and energy and effort. And so a lot of the fundraising, we've always kind of did exactly what you did. We kind of layer this, You're already training for it. Do it for something more than just for you. And it gives you a whole nother layer of feel good, do good, be good.
Absolutely.
As opposed to just being a selfish paddler and accomplishing this.
At the end of the day, you can have your personal accolades and you can be, like the greatest of all time. But like if you, and this is something I've only recently come to find out, is helping others is such a beautiful part of life. And it gives such meaning to your life, helping others, because you can go get the wave of the day all day long or get your awards and all that. But when you've actually helped somebody, which goes back to lifeguarding, when you've made a difference in someone else's life, that to me is true meaning in life and really helps you be the best version of yourself.
Well, what's really amazing too, Spence, is listening to this from you. Like, surfing is the most selfish sport in the world. You're out there trying to get waves out from everybody.
Oh yeah, my girlfriend knows.
Like, right? And so to be able to recognize this through another exploit on the water, it's just super good. But there is a piece of it, and I always talk about this. For those people that have never done the channel before, if you're a lifeguard or if you've grown up surfing anywhere in this part of Southern California, you look at that island all the time on clear days like today, and you're staring across this thing, and it's a big body of water, 32 miles.
Yeah.
When somebody accomplishes that for the first time, like when you paddled it for the first time, or like it is a pretty powerful impact for someone to go,
I did that.
Or as I was saying, you got young men, if you're sitting next to a pretty girl on the beach and you go, see that island?
Yeah.
I paddled that. Like, there's a level of confidence and pride that comes from that, bar none. And that ability or that feeling of confidence and recognition that I can do hard things.
Yeah.
It's a big learning. So Kyron Stewart had his stepson, Mason Graff, out there.
Yeah.
Masons are ripping, really nice kids.
Such a
Mason
good kid.
paddled the Bended Go at 15 this year.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the story of like what it was like the days thereafter?
I know that he was just amazed at what he did, right? He was kind of doubting himself before, but he had trained, and then,
as the story goes from his dad and from mom, is that they saw this spark in him that he might not have even seen, but they saw this like little level up, like a level of confidence, a level of maturity, I think is what they said. Like he was a young man now and not a kid. And I was just like, oh man, like, so rad, right? It can do a lot. Doing something that hard, it can do a lot. You're in the pain cave out. Most people don't train like you or like me. Like a lot of those people, they train to get it done once.
Yeah.
It's a hard day. Even in the best conditions, it's a hard day out there. But when you finish that, and some of us, we took turns like bringing up the rear and spending time with the people who were hurting the most. Like those ones probably get the most out of it, because when you're hurting that bad and you get it done, your level of pride is
the worst year I ever had doing it was my second year. Literally almost didn't finish. You know why? Because I thought, I did the run, or I did a paddle last year. I'm good. And it humbled me so greatly to where now and every year it's like a science. I feel like I get a little better if I'm on my game with my training and nutrition. But when you think you are just like, boom, I've got this handled, if you don't take it seriously, there's something about the ocean, all those elements and that distance that will just get you.
And that also happens in big wave surfing.
Exactly. 100%.
Well, I mean, listen, you had a brutal Catalina Classic this year too.
Yes, that was tough.
One of the worst years ever.
Yeah. But in a way, I was kind of ready for it because of the training, and I was able to adapt to it, where I've had plenty of other times where I've honestly that was tough, but because of the homework I put in, it wasn't that bad. I didn't win or anything like that, but for me personally, I felt all right during it because I trained hard enough for it.
Well, that's the key in life, right?
Yeah.
If you go super hard, right? Everybody watching this, like if you spend time on YouTube or spend time on Instagram, like if you follow motivational people, that's what they say, right? Like it's the Kobe Bryant thing.
Yeah.
If you outwork everybody else and you do it long enough, you build up this compounded base that will exceed anybody else's ability to catch up. Now, I'm never going to win anything, but I'm going to train pretty hard because I also really don't want to hurt. I've had those crossings where I was cocky, thought I had it it was great last year. This will be easy. And it was the worst experience of my life because I was cocky and I undertrained. And I learned very quickly, I'll never do that again. I will never undertrain again. And you can't turn your back on the ocean, training wise, or, literally don't. But so, sometimes
you just know you're better than that. And you're like, oh man, why did I put myself in this situation? This sucks.
Sometimes we forget.
Yes.
And then we get slapped and we have to learn it again. Right?
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Listen, you're wearing the shirt, Ben Carlson Foundation. You talked a fair bit about what they do. What's it been like being on the advisory board and kind of being behind the scenes? And you're involved in a lot of things, not just the Ben Carlson Foundation, but you're also, there are things out there related to big wave safety and all these other. Can you talk about some of the other groups that the foundation is involved in, supports what they do, and maybe some of the international stuff that the foundation supports?
So what we just talked about, the paddle, is one section of the board of advisors that I'm a big part of, obviously. But another area that I love being a part of, and it goes hand in hand with who Ben was and his traveling and surfing and connections he made, is the international lifeguard agency outreach that we do. And I'm a part of that sector of the foundation. And what we do is in a nutshell, we're looking and finding agencies all over the world. There's a lot in South America that are lifeguard agencies that are underfunded by their government, if they get any funds at all, and that need our help. They're in hot spots like, Nicaragua, or big one is Puerto Escondido, place Ben loved. It's the Mexican pipeline, 20-foot spitting barrels pumping, right? A lot of surfers, a lot of tourism there. But they don't have buoys. They don't have fins. They need a new jet ski. We just recently bought them a new ATV because the sand is 1,000 freaking degrees and they need to go a half a mile down the beach to make a rescue. Things like that. And what we're doing at the foundation now is making a point of, getting these contacts in these specific areas, becoming good friends with them, building these relationships with these agencies. A lot of them know the story of Ben Carlson. We've been down there and talking to these guys, and yo conozco Ben Carlson, whether it's there, whether it's Zihuatanejo, Nicaragua, we now have partnerships that we're starting in northern Baja, in Ensenada and Rosarito. These are areas that, I think if you travel there, you see why there's a necessity, but if it's out of sight, out of mind, you don't. And I was recently talking with one individual who's a part of the Ensenada agency, and they had 8 deaths last year at a popular beach down there. Wow. Just 8 deaths that could have been prevented probably with more supplies, more resources overall to that agency. And that's what we're about. And I love, we kind of talked about it earlier, but we're both not lifeguards anymore, but to be doing this work and hopefully saving lives, I believe we are. The whole foundation is. It's so much fun and it's so gratifying. And I just love the direction of the foundation because we're doing all that we can to improve. We really, really are putting in a lot of hard work and want to just continue doing it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Talk real quickly about the scholarship aspect of the foundation, because it's so cool.
Yeah, so the scholarship aspect, every year we have done, it's been $10,000 scholarships for, and this is basically people, lifeguards all around that are, financially struggling a little bit and need financial aid. But then they also possess qualities academically, personal qualities that Ben embodied. Ben was an amazing student. He was an amazing athlete at UCI where he attended. And he had, it was just this overarching, well-rounded ability. And we kind of look for candidates like that. And they've got a story as well, though. We've had stories of people with health issues that they've overcome, people with financial issues. And it's just really cool every year to see those candidates get up there and receive those awards. And this year we've got 3 $15,000 scholarships. So it's cool to see the ante be upped.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, it is awesome. I'm calling them kids, are not kids. These are young adults going into college. They are incredible humans. Like, their accolades across all spectrums. And the number of people that are reviewed for these, I mean, it's a super impressive process. But kids from all over the country are throwing their hat in the ring for these scholarships, and it's a stacked deck. It is really impressive. So it's really, really cool. Thank you. Let's pivot real quick, and we'll wrap this up soon. Spence, man, it's so fun. Sorry, I'm like pausing here. It's so fun, and anybody watching this, like, from the time that I met you till now, like, your public speaking ability, and you've done this at the awards banquet night, like, it's just so cool to watch the person that you're evolving into. So what's next for Spencer Pirdy?
Well, I've got a really serious girlfriend that I love.
We love her. She's good.
She's awesome. Good. Shout out to Michelle. You know what? Next for me is not anything drastic. I love where my life is at the moment. You know, I love where work is. I'm doing a lot of fun things. You know, I'm like, as you mentioned earlier, you know, the real estate, the little side jobs that I have, they keep me busy. I'm up at 5 a.m. every day, getting my workout in just like you are. And then my day's filled, you know. The only thing that will kind of, you know, switch things around is if I see a big storm coming, and then I want to go try to chase some big waves. But the good thing is big waves don't happen all that often.
Yeah.
And I love my family. We had, you know, we had a tragic thing happen earlier in the fall with my dad passing. But one thing that I do foresee is I want to, you know, I want to have a family one day, and I want to live a good, honest life like my father lived, and try to help people along the way. And just keep working hard. I think as long as I've got those things going, I think and stay close to my family, I think good things will come. And I don't need anything crazy in life, just a couple big waves every once in a while, and just some good friends and a loving family and girlfriend.
Dude. Well, listen, I had all these other questions, but they're not, you kind of encapsulated them all.
Cool.
Like, I love the vision, where you're going. You know, I was going to ask you, but I'm going to ask it. I'm going to say it. Like, I was going to ask, do you feel like you have a superpower? And I don't know if you do or you don't, but I'm going to say this is what I would think. If somebody asked me, what is Spencer's superpower? I would say you are one of those super positive. It's not like your ex, but you're like this super positive, super humble, unbelievably passionate badass. Like,
Thanks.
to do the paddling stuff, to do the big wave stuff, to lead people, to get up in front of people. You're super confident, and like, you get up and talk all the time. Like, it's just a super, I think
too much sometimes.
No. You know what? And listen, and maybe this is what you've been striving for without knowing it. Maybe it's been by design, but I did not know Ben. I think Ben would be incredibly proud of the man that you are, because I think that what I know of him, and it's only what I know from stories, and that you're really following in his footsteps.
Yeah.
And I think he'd be super proud.
That means
of
the
you.
world, because if I make him proud, that, you know, making Ben Carlson proud and my father proud up there, that would mean the world to me.
Well, dude, I think you're doing it in spades.
Thank you.
Spencer Pirdy, thank you so much for being here, brother.
Thanks,
I am
Mark.
so proud of you.
Thank you, man.
Thanks, buddy.